The laughter cut sharper than the cold wind sweeping through Washington Square Park. She stood there, skinny, clothes torn, hair matted from nights on the street, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, will you let me play for bread?" The crowd erupted. Men slapped the table, women shook their heads, even children pointed. They weren't laughing with her. They were laughing at her. New York City had seen thousands of hustlers play chess in this park, Wall Street analysts testing their egos, retired veterans keeping their minds sharp, immigrants chasing dignity one pawn at a time, but never a homeless black girl with nothing in her pockets but hunger. The man across the board smirked. He was Reggie Dawson, the kind of player who lived off humiliating challengers. He leaned back, folded his arms, and asked loud enough for the whole park to hear, "Bread? That's what you want? You think this table's a soup kitchen?" More laughter. Someone tossed her an empty paper cup, shouting, "Why not beg like the others?" Her hands trembled as she reached for the pieces. They weren't just carved wood to her. They were survival. Each pawn, a meal. Each move, a chance to prove she wasn't invisible. The man hit the clock. "Fine, sweetheart. Play me. First move's yours." She stared at the board as if it were the only world that still made sense. And then she touched a pawn. Not at random, not fumbling. She moved it with precision, confidence, as if she had lived her entire life for this single moment. The crowd went quiet, a silence so strange it felt heavy, because suddenly it didn't look like a child begging anymore. It looked like a fighter walking into battle. And this is where it begins. The game that would expose hidden truths, turn strangers into enemies, and force everyone watching to question what they thought they knew about power, race, and genius. But before we move deeper into this story, ask yourself this. If you were sitting there, would you have laughed with the crowd or given her a chance? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, the kind most people would rather look away from, make sure you subscribe, because missing what comes next, that would mean walking away right before the move that changes everything. The silence didn't last. "Look at her hands. She's shaking," someone jeered. "She's never played a day in her life." "This is going to be over before my coffee gets cold." The voices piled on, harsh and relentless, as if mocking her would somehow protect them from the unease that had crept in when she touched that pawn with such strange confidence. A teenager with a skateboard rolled by and shouted, "Hey, play fast, man! Let her lose so I can get a turn." Laughter roared again, crueler this time, the kind that doesn't just watch a person fall, it pushes them. But in the crowd there was one who didn't laugh. An older man with a veteran's cap shifted closer, his eyes narrowing. In his hand, a small brown bag. He tore it open and held out a sandwich. "Here, sweetheart, whether you win or lose, you shouldn't be starving." For a moment, her face softened. Hope flickered. She almost reached out. Almost. But then, someone snatched the bag from her hands and tossed it to the ground. She doesn't need food. She needs a miracle. The sandwich lay in the dirt, untouched. The kindness was gone as quickly as it appeared, swallowed whole by the cruelty around her. Her hands returned to the pieces. No words, no excuses, just the board in front of her. She slid another pawn forward, steady, deliberate. The man across from her smirked. "Cute, but you'll regret that." He slammed his knight forward, loud enough to rattle the clock. The crowd cheered his move as though the game had already ended. She didn't look up. She didn't flinch. Instead, her hand brushed over the pocket of her coat, where a torn notebook was tucked away. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. But if they had, they might have seen the worn cover, filled with penciled diagrams, puzzles, and lines of strategy far beyond the reach of an ordinary child. But in that moment, to them, she was still nothing but a joke. Nothing but a girl chasing bread. Move after move, the laughter continued, taunts from every side. Bet she doesn't even know how the horse moves. Somebody call the cops. She's wasting our time. This is the easiest win Reggie's ever had. And yet, the board began to tell another story, Her pieces weren't scattering. They weren't lost. They were circling, coiling, preparing. The crowd didn't see it. The hustler didn't see it. But one old man in the corner, the same veteran, leaned forward and whispered, just loud enough for himself to hear, "This girl, she knows exactly what she's doing." A chill moved through the park, because while the laughter was loud, the game was whispering something else, something nobody wanted to admit. Not yet. And if you're watching this now, you can probably sense it too. The shift. So let me ask you, what do you think happens when the one everyone laughs at finally fights back? Comment your answer below. The pieces clicked against the board, fast, sharp, each sound swallowed by the echo of jeers. But slowly, so slowly, the rhythm changed. At first, nobody noticed. The hustler's swagger carried the crowd. Every slam of his pieces drew cheers. Every smirk reinforced the certainty that this girl had no chance. But then, his smirk began to fade. Her rook slid across the board with surgical precision. His bishop, cornered. His pawn, trapped. His knight, rendered useless. The veteran in the cap leaned forward, eyes wide. He saw it before anyone else. This wasn't luck. This wasn't desperation. This was calculation. The hustler shifted in his seat, tugging at his jacket collar. He frowned at the board, leaning closer as though the pieces had betrayed him. "What the?" he muttered under his breath. The crowd leaned in now, too. The laughter began to falter, replaced by whispers. "Wait, what's happening? Did she just... No way. Reggie's just toying with her, right?" Move after move, her silence cut deeper than any insult. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at the crowd. Every ounce of her being was locked into the 64 squares in front of her. Her hand never trembled again. And then her queen slid into place. Check. The hustler jolted upright, his bravado slipping. He scanned the board, desperate for an escape, but there was none. The crowd's whispers turned into gasps. "Hold on, Reggie's losing." "No way! No way!" The clock ticked down. 10 seconds. 9, 8. Reggie's hand hovered over a pawn, then jerked away. Over a knight, no good. Over the king, trapped. Her voice, soft but steady, broke the tension. "Checkmate." Silence, then chaos. The park erupted, half the crowd shouting in disbelief, the other half cheering like they'd just witnessed a miracle. Phones came out. Flashes went off. Strangers shoved forward to see the board with their own eyes. Reggie shoved his chair back, his face red, his confidence shattered. Nah, she cheated. There's no way." But the pieces told the truth. The board was merciless, and the girl, this homeless teenager nobody believed in, sat with quiet dignity, her eyes fixed not on her opponent, not on the crowd, but on the next game, the next challenge, the next chance to earn a meal. Because for her, this wasn't about pride, it wasn't about glory, it was survival, and survival was only just beginning. Now tell me, if you had been standing there, watching this moment unfold, what would you have done? Would you have laughed at her first, or would you have believed in her before anyone else? Drop your answer in the comments. The crowd at Washington Square was still buzzing, voices clashing like pieces slammed on a board. But the question on everyone's lips wasn't about the hustler she defeated. It was about her. Who was this girl? The truth lay far from New York, hundreds of miles south, in Atlanta, Georgia. She hadn't always lived on the streets. There was a time, not long ago, when her life looked almost ordinary. A 2-bedroom apartment on the south side of Atlanta, a mother who worked double shifts at a diner, and a father, Marcus Daniels, who loved her more than anything, and taught her that even in a world full of unfairness, there was always strategy. Chess wasn't just a game to Marcus. It was survival disguised as 64 squares. He'd tell her, "Life will come at you with the force of a queen. If you can see 3 moves ahead, you'll never be cornered." But Marcus never got to finish teaching her everything. One night, flashing blue lights filled their street. Neighbors peeked from their windows as officers dragged him away in handcuffs. The charge? Armed robbery. The evidence? Thin at best. The truth? Marcus had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, a black man matching the wrong description. She was 9 years old when she first visited him in prison. The metal detector buzzed, the doors clanged shut behind her, and her small hands clutched a plastic bag with cookies she hoped he could keep. He smiled at her through the glass, tried to hide the bruises, and slid a beat-up chess set across the table. From then on, every visit became a lesson. Her father made her memorize openings, endgames, traps. He made her solve puzzles scribbled on the back of old envelopes, and every time she found the winning move, his smile grew. For him, chess was proof she could outthink a world designed to crush her. But then, tragedy struck again. Her mother collapsed at work one afternoon. Heart failure, no money for proper health care, no family nearby. Just like that, she was gone. A girl of 11 left behind with no father, no mother, and no safety net. Foster homes came next, places where she was a paycheck, not a child. Some families kept her long enough to collect the state stipend, then sent her back. Others were crueler, making her sleep in basements, calling her names, reminding her she didn't belong. And yet, even in those dark corners, she carried a single object with her, a small silver chess knight her father had given her during one visit. "As long as you have this," he told her, "you'll remember that even the smallest piece can change the game." Years passed. She drifted. She learned to stop expecting kindness. And then, at 14, she vanished. Her name disappeared from school rosters. Her photo vanished from foster records. Some whispered she ran away. Others assumed the worst. But nobody really knew what happened to her. Until now. Because here she was, years later, in Washington Square Park, asking to play for bread. The crowd didn't see that history written in her eyes. They didn't hear the echo of prison doors slamming, or the sound of her mother's last breath. They saw only a girl too poor to matter. But the truth was that this wasn't just a game to her. It was her father's voice, her mother's memory, her entire past rising from the shadows to meet her in battle. And if the hustlers thought she was done after one win, they hadn't learned the first rule of her life. She was always 3 moves ahead. But what they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that she had already been here before. On a stage, under bright lights, with a trophy in her hands. Yes, this wasn't the first time she had stunned a crowd. And that secret? It was about to come crashing back. The paper bag crinkled in her hands, warm from the loaf of bread they'd finally given her. She could smell it, feel her stomach twist in knots at the thought of a single bite. But the laughter around her never stopped. "Lucky move, that's all," one man sneered. "Do it again. If you're really that good, beat him twice." The hustler she'd just defeated wasn't smiling anymore. His grin had curdled into rage. His pride was on the line, and in this park, pride mattered more than money. He slammed the pieces back onto the board, pawns scattering like teeth on the pavement. "Sit down," he barked. "One more. Double or nothing." She froze. For a moment, the bread in her lap weighed more than gold. She could walk away now, finally eat, finally rest. But then the jeers began. "Scared?" "Thought so." Guess she only had one trick. The crowd pressed closer, their eyes greedy for a show. To them it wasn't about bread. It was about humiliation. And for her, it was something even sharper. Dignity. Every insult was an echo of the basement she'd been shoved into. Every laugh was a reminder of the foster homes that treated her like furniture. And in her chest, her father's voice whispered the words she had lived by. "If you can see 3 moves ahead, you'll never be cornered." She set the bread aside. The crowd erupted in cheers, some mocking, some thrilled. She slid back into the seat across from him, her eyes locked not on the board, but on him. For the first time, he looked unsure. The first game had shocked him. But if she won again, in front of everyone, it wouldn't just ruin his pride. It would ruin his reputation as the park's king. And he knew it. But what he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that she wasn't just playing for a meal anymore. She was playing for every time someone told her she didn't belong, for every door slammed in her face, for every whisper that said she would never rise. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Her hands hovered over the pawns as the hustler muttered, "This time, no mistakes." The crowd leaned in. Phones came out, a circle of strangers now holding their breath, waiting for the first move. And then, silence. She lifted her hand, and with a calmness that shook him to his core, she touched her pawn. The game had begun, but what happened next was something nobody expected. Before I tell you, I want to know, what would you have done in her place? Walk away with the bread, or sit down and risk it all for respect? Comment below. I'll be reading. And if you're watching this and haven't subscribed, do it now, because the next twist in her story is about to flip everything upside down. The park fell silent. The girl's fingers rested on the pawn as the hustler leaned forward, his jaw tight, his hands drumming against the table. "Make your move," he growled. She did. A simple opening, quiet, cautious, almost humble. The crowd chuckled. "See? First one was a fluke. He's got her now." But she wasn't playing for them. Her mind was already 6 steps ahead, mapping traps like invisible tripwires across the board. The hustler lunged forward, snapping pieces down with a swagger that looked more desperate than confident. Each slam was meant to intimidate, to remind her of the hierarchy. He was the master here. She was just a nobody begging for scraps. And yet, with every move, she answered calmly. Knight sliding forward, bishop cutting across, pieces falling like dominoes. The jeers turned to murmurs, murmurs to silence, and then gasps. "Wait, she set a trap. No, no way." The hustler froze. His queen was gone, captured in a snare he never saw coming. The crowd erupted. Some laughed, others shouted, phones flashing as they recorded every second. His face flushed red. He shoved his chair back, stood up, paced. But there was no escape. The board was a cage, and she held the keys. Her father's voice whispered in her mind, "See 3 moves ahead." And she had. With a quiet firmness, she pushed her rook into position. Checkmate. The hustler slammed his fist against the table. The crowd roared. And there she sat, small, hungry, clutching her bag of bread again. A girl who had just torn down the park's king. But while everyone's eyes were on the defeated hustler, nobody noticed the man standing just outside the circle. A tall figure in a dark coat, hands tucked neatly into his pockets. He didn't laugh. He didn't cheer. He just watched her with a focus that sent a shiver crawling up her spine. And when she glanced up, just for a moment, their eyes met. She didn't know why, but it felt different. Like this stranger hadn't just seen her play a game. He'd recognized her. The crowd swarmed closer, shouting for another match, throwing challenges her way, but she couldn't shake the thought, who was that man? And why did he look at her like he already knew her story? Tell me this, if you were her, would you play again, or would you run? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see what you'd choose. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because from here on things don't just change, they accelerate. The hustler's chair still rocked on its legs as he stormed away, muttering curses under his breath. The crowd didn't follow him. Their eyes were fixed on her. The girl who had walked in asking for bread had just dismantled the park's best player twice. "What's her name?" someone asked. "Never seen her before." "She's too young. Must be a trick." But then, from the back of the crowd, a voice spoke up. Soft, unsure, almost like he didn't believe his own words. I think I've seen her before. Atlanta, a kids' tournament, years ago." Heads snapped toward him. "What are you talking about?" "She looks just like that girl. What was her name?" "No way. That girl disappeared." The girl's chest tightened. Her hands gripped the paper bag so tightly it nearly tore. Because they weren't wrong. She had been there once. On a stage, under bright lights, with cameras flashing. Her name printed on a bracket. Her picture in a program. Back when she was a child prodigy, before the world took everything away. And now, these strangers were about to connect the dots. The whispers spread like wildfire. She's the one from that story. Didn't her dad? No, that can't be her. Every word cut sharper than hunger. Every rumor threatened to rip open the past she had tried so hard to bury. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt tighter, lowered her head, tried to disappear again. But she couldn't escape the feeling that someone in this crowd was already certain. And then, her eyes flicked to the edge of the park. The man in the dark coat was still there, still watching, not with curiosity but with recognition. The crowd shouted for another match, waving bills in the air, offering her money instead of bread now. But she didn't hear them. Her mind was trapped in that single thought. If they know who I am, everything changes. And for the first time that night, she wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse. Would you have spoken up if you were in that crowd? Or would you have stayed quiet, letting her secret stay hidden? Comment below. I want to hear your take. The chants were deafening now. Play again. Double it up. Take my money, kid, let's go. Phones flashed in her face. Strangers pressed too close, the smell of cigarettes and hot pretzels clinging to the night air. But then, through the wall of noise, one voice cut clear. Hey, leave her alone. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't hostile, it was steady. A woman pushed through the crowd, mid-30s, worn coat, a tote bag on her shoulder, a school teacher maybe, or a nurse finishing a late shift. Her face held no mockery, no greed, only concern. She's just a kid, the woman said firmly, placing herself between the girl and the hustlers circling closer. You already got your show. Let her go home. The crowd jeered at her. What are you, her lawyer? Mind your business. She sat down, she's fair game. But the woman didn't move. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out something small, a granola bar. She pressed it into the girl's trembling hands and whispered, Eat first, win later. For a second, just a second, the girl felt something she hadn't felt in years. Seen. Her throat tightened, but she forced the feeling down. Kindness was dangerous. Kindness got you noticed, and noticed meant exposed. Still, she couldn't ignore the teacher's steady eyes, the way she stood firm when no one else did. And in that moment of fragile silence, she realized, the man in the dark coat was still there, watching, closer now. Her chest pounded. Was he connected to the whispers? To her past? Why hadn't he left? The crowd grew restless again, shouting over the standoff. One more game! Put her against me! What's she afraid of? The teacher looked at her, voice low enough only she could hear. You don't owe them anything. You can walk away. I'll help you. But could she? Could she trust this stranger? Or would accepting her help put her straight into the kind of danger she'd been running from all these years? The bread was still in her lap, the granola bar in her hand, and a city full of eyes waiting to see her next move. So tell me, if it were you, would you take the woman's hand and walk away? Or would you stay, sit down, and risk everything again? Comment below. I want to know how you would play this game. The woman's hand lingered on her shoulder, gentle but firm. Come on, she whispered. You don't need this crowd, let's go. For a heartbeat, the girl wanted to follow her, to eat in peace without laughter echoing in her ears. But then, a new voice cut through the air. She beat you. The crowd parted as another man stepped forward. Older, taller, his jacket crisp, his sneakers spotless. Everyone knew him. He wasn't just a hustler, he was the park's shark, the one nobody challenged unless they had money to lose. He dropped into the empty chair with a smirk. Your move, little girl, unless you're scared. The crowd howled. Phones shot up. This was the fight they wanted. The teacher shook her head. Don't. You've already proved your point. But her chest burned. Scared? She'd been scared all her life. Scared of cops dragging her father away. Scared of losing her mother. Scared of being passed like luggage through foster homes. But here, in front of 64 squares, she wasn't scared. She was alive. The bread in her lap grew heavier, the granola bar untouched in her pocket. Her hunger gnawed at her ribs, but pride gnawed deeper. She looked at the man in the chair, then at the crowd, chanting her name now, not in mockery, but in awe. And finally, at the man in the coat, closer than before, his gaze locked only on her. Her father's voice echoed, "See 3 moves ahead." And she knew. This was more than bread. This was more than pride. This was her test. Slowly, she set the loaf aside, pulled the chair toward her, and sat down. The park erupted. The shark grinned. Good choice. Let's see if lightning strikes 3 times. Her fingers hovered above the pawn. Her stomach growled. The air pressed down, thick with tension. And then she touched the piece. The 3rd game had begun. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this game wouldn't just change her night. It would change everything. So tell me, would you have walked away with food in your hands? Or would you have sat down knowing everything was on the line? Comment below. I'll be watching your answers. The board reset. The shark cracked his knuckles, eyes gleaming with the hunger of a predator. This wasn't about bread. This wasn't even about pride. This was about reputation, and he wasn't about to let a child dismantle his. He struck fast, his opening aggressive, pieces snapping forward like claws. The crowd leaned in, roaring with every move. He's got her! She's already cornered. And for the first time that night, her hand trembled. Her stomach growled so loud the man across from her smirked. You hungry, little girl? Good. I'll make this quick. Her vision blurred. The bread, the granola bar, they taunted her, just out of reach. She had pushed herself too far. 2 games in, no food, no rest. Her head pounded with every thud of a pawn on the table. The teacher shouted from the edge of the crowd, "Stop this! She's a child!" But her voice was drowned in cheers and laughter. And through it all, the man in the coat stepped closer. Now at the edge of the circle, his eyes never leaving her, his face unreadable, but his presence heavier with every passing second. She tried to focus, tried to see 3 moves ahead, but the shark was fast, ruthless, pressing her with every turn. His rook crashed across the board, cutting off her defenses. His knight leapt into place, forcing her king back. Her position was collapsing. The crowd roared. "It's over!" "She's finished!" Her chest heaved, her hands shook. This was it, the breaking point. And then she looked down. For the first time in the match, her eyes widened. Not in fear, in recognition. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "When you're cornered, remember, knights move in ways no one expects." Her fingers brushed the silver knight in her pocket, the piece he'd given her all those years ago, and in that moment she saw it. A path, a trap, a way out. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. The shark leaned forward, confused by the sudden calm in her face. "What are you smiling at?" he snapped. But she didn't answer. She lifted her hand. Her knight hovered above the board. And then the screen fades to black. Would you have seen the move she saw? Or would you have folded under the pressure? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious how many of you would have survived this game. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't wait, because the next move she makes will silence the entire park. Her hand didn't shake this time. She lifted the knight and placed it down with a soft click. For a moment, nothing. Then the shark leaned forward, his brow furrowed. His smirk wavered. He checked the board once, then again, then a 3rd time. And then he saw it. The crowd gasped as the trap revealed itself. In one elegant sweep, The night had shattered his strategy, cutting off his queen, boxing in his king. Every move he had made in arrogance had led him straight into her snare. "No, no, that's not," he stammered. But it was. 2 moves later, checkmate. The park erupted into chaos. Cheers, shouts, disbelieving laughter. Phones shot higher, streaming live to thousands now. A legend was being born in real time, a homeless black girl who had just torn down the shark of Washington Square Park. The shark shoved the board, pawns scattering across the pavement. No way, she cheated, nobody does that. But the silence in his voice betrayed him. He knew the truth, and so did everyone else. The teacher pushed through the crowd, gripping the girl's shoulders. "That's enough. You've proved it. Don't give them any more." Her chest heaved, her stomach screamed, but her eyes still burned with quiet fire. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt powerful. But then, she saw him. The man in the coat had stepped inside the circle now. No longer just a shadow on the edge. He was here, in front of her, only a few feet away. The crowd parted slightly around him, as if sensing something different. He didn't cheer. He didn't mock. He didn't even blink. He just watched her. And then, slowly, he reached into his coat pocket. The crowd hushed, uncertain. Was he pulling out money? A phone? Something else? He pulled out neither. Instead, he placed something small on the edge of the chessboard, a folded newspaper clipping, old, yellowed, her photo staring back at her, smiling, holding a trophy. She froze, her throat closed, her secret, her past, staring at her from the table. The man turned without a word and walked away, his coat brushing the shoulders of strangers as he disappeared into the night. The crowd never noticed, but she did, and in that instant she realized her past hadn't just caught up with her. It had been watching her all along. The folded paper sat on the board like a ghost. Her face, smiling, polished, standing proud with a trophy in hand, looked nothing like the hungry girl trembling in front of it now. The teacher's eyes widened as she leaned in. "Wait, I know this. I remember this." Her voice cracked with disbelief. You're not just some girl off the street. You were—" "Don't," the girl whispered. Her hand slammed down over the clipping, crumpling it in her palm. The crowd kept cheering, chanting her name, oblivious to the storm between the two of them. Phones streamed, coins clattered into hats. But here, in this small circle, time froze. The teacher's lips trembled. "Why didn't you tell me? Why hide something like this? You were supposed to be the future. Every magazine, every competition, you were—" "That person doesn't exist anymore," the girl snapped, her voice shaking. Her eyes flicked toward the corner where the man in the coat had vanished. "And if he found me, others will too." The teacher reached for her, but the girl pulled back, clutching the clipping like a wound. Her breath hitched. The park felt too small, the faces too close, the lights too bright. She staggered to her feet, shoving through the crowd. Coins spilled. Someone shouted after her, but she didn't stop. She ran. Her footsteps echoed down the pavement, swallowed by the New York night. The crowd faded, the teacher's voice lost in the noise. All that remained was the sound of her heartbeat, and the memory of that photograph staring back at her. The world thought they had just witnessed the birth of a prodigy, but they had no idea. They were watching the return of a fallen star. Tell me, would you have revealed your secret, or would you have run too? Drop your answer in the comments. Her sneakers slapped against the wet pavement, carrying her through streets lit by the glow of neon and passing taxis. The city never slept. But tonight it felt like it was chasing her. She clutched the clipping in her fist, the edges cutting into her palm. Her face on that page stared back at her, younger, brighter, someone who believed in tomorrow. And with every step, memory bled into the night, the weight of a heavy trophy in her hands. Her father lifting her into the air, whispering, "You're unstoppable, baby girl." Newspapers, cameras, applause. And then, darkness. A door slammed shut, a voice screaming, hands she trusted turning into fists, the shattering sound of a chessboard hitting the floor. Her pace slowed, her breaths grew ragged. She pressed her back against a graffiti-scarred wall, sliding to the ground. The clipping fell from her hand, fluttering into a puddle. Her reflection rippled through the water, two versions of herself colliding. "Why did you run?" The teacher's voice cut through the chaos. She had followed, breathless but determined, clutching her coat against the wind. "You don't have to carry this alone." The girl's laugh was bitter, cracked. "Don't you get it? I had everything once, and I lost it, not because I wasn't good enough, but because the world decided what a girl like me could and couldn't be. Because every time I won, they looked past the board and only saw my skin." Her voice broke. "Do you know what it's like to fight your way to the top, only to be told you don't belong there?" The teacher knelt, eyes shining. "I know injustice, but I also know this: talent doesn't die. You're still her, the girl in that photo, and they can't take that from you." For a moment, silence. A fragile, aching silence. Then, the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Both women froze. At the far end of the alley, a figure stepped into view. The coat, the shadow, the same man. He hadn't left. He had been following, waiting, and now he was here. The girl's heart pounded in her throat. The clipping lay between them in the puddle, her past staring up from the water. The man's voice, calm, low, almost gentle. "It's time we talked." The alley was still, save for the drip of water from a broken pipe and the thundering of her heart. The teacher stood tense, protective. The girl pressed against the wall, fists clenched, ready to bolt. And the man in the coat? He stepped closer, unhurried, as though he had been walking toward this moment for years. "You shouldn't be here," the teacher warned. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. The man ignored her. His eyes never left the girl. "You don't recognize me, do you?" She swallowed hard. "Should I?" He reached into his coat again, not fast, not threatening, and pulled out something small. Not a weapon. A photograph. The same girl, years younger, standing beside a man with his arm around her shoulders. A man whose smile was filled with pride. Her father. Her breath caught. Her knees weakened. Where did you get that?" The man's voice softened, carrying the weight of memory. "I was there. The night everything fell apart. The night your father was forced to choose." Her eyes burned. "No, you're lying. He didn't choose. He abandoned me." But the man shook his head. "He didn't leave you. He protected you. There were people, powerful people, who didn't want a black girl at the top of their game. Your father stood up to them, and he paid the price." The words sliced through her like glass. Everything she thought she knew, every ounce of anger, every scar she carried, suddenly cracked under the weight of doubt. The teacher whispered, horrified, "You mean they forced her out?" The man nodded once. "They buried her story before it could be told, and they buried him along with it." The girl's legs gave out. She sank to the ground, clutching her head, memories colliding with new truth, the laughter, the doors closing, the sudden silence when sponsors vanished. All of it orchestrated. Not fate, not failure, a choice made by men in shadows. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you telling me this now?" The man crouched down, his face finally visible in the dim light. "Because the people who erased you are still out there, and they know you're back." The alley held 3 people, but it felt like the world was watching. The girl knelt in the cold, her hands trembling, the truth echoing in her mind. Not forgotten, not abandoned. Erased. The teacher crouched beside her, voice gentle but urgent. "This changes everything, don't you see? You're not broken. You were stolen from. Now you can take it back." But the girl shook her head, her voice ragged. "And what happens if I do? They'll come after me again. I barely survived the first time." The man's tone was low, steady, cutting through her doubt. You don't understand. You've already made your move. Tonight, in that park, you stepped back onto the board, the crowd, the cameras. The whole world is talking now. You can't hide again. It's too late. Her stomach turned. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the shadows she knew so well. But deep inside, another voice stirred. The same voice that had guided her hand tonight. The same fire that had never gone out. Her father's voice. When you're cornered, remember, nights move in ways no one expects. She closed her eyes, gripping the silver knight in her pocket, the weight of it pressed into her palm like a promise. When she opened her eyes, the teacher and the man both froze, because the fear was gone. Something else had taken its place, determination. The girl rose to her feet, shoulders squared, the city lights painting her face. If they want me back on the board, then I'll play, but not the way they expect. The man studied her silently, a faint shadow of respect in his eyes. The teacher's breath caught, realizing the decision had been made. But what decision was it? To fight them head on? To expose them publicly? Or to destroy them from the inside? Only she knew, and she wasn't telling. The night did not end in the alley. It began there. By morning, her face was everywhere. Clips of the match spread like wildfire, hashtags trending, headlines asking, "Who is the homeless chess prodigy?" Some called her a miracle, others called her a fraud, but all of them were watching. In a small diner, the teacher slid a cup of coffee across the table. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. "I'll help you, whatever comes next." The girl wrapped her hands around the cup, silent. Her eyes darted to the TV mounted on the wall. There she was, her own face, pixelated, broadcast to millions. The caption burned. "Forgotten star returns?" She looked away, jaw tightening. The man in the coat leaned against the counter, his tone sharp but calm. "Now you see, every move has consequences. The question is, are you ready to play their game?" The girl's lips curved, faint but fierce. "No, I'm going to play mine." The teacher frowned. "And what does that mean?" But the girl didn't answer. Instead, she pulled the folded clipping from her pocket and pressed it flat against the table. Her younger self stared back at her, bright-eyed, unbroken. She whispered almost to herself, "They erased me once. Let's see them try again." The man raised an eyebrow. "Then make your first move." That night, under the glow of Times Square, she did. She walked into a chess club known only to the elite, its doors rarely open to outsiders. Every player turned as she entered, whispers rippling through the room. She set down her battered backpack, pulled out the same silver knight she'd carried all these years, and placed it in the center of the nearest board. Her challenge was silent, but the message was deafening. She wasn't hiding anymore. The game had begun. What do you think her strategy is? To rise as a hero? Or to burn the system that betrayed her? Comment your guess below. And if you haven't subscribed, don't wait, because the final strike is coming, and the checkmate will leave everyone speechless. Her silent challenge did not stay silent for long. By morning, the whispers had turned into headlines. The forgotten girl was not only back, she was standing in the heart of their world, daring them to face her. Some watched with awe. She's the real deal. She could change everything. But others clenched their teeth. The same men who once pulled strings behind closed doors now felt their grip slipping, and they remembered the girl they had buried. The teacher sat with her in that dimly lit club, studying her across the table. "They'll come after you," she warned, harder than ever before. The girl didn't flinch. "I know. That's why I'm ready." The man in the coat leaned in, his words sharp, deliberate. "This isn't about beating one opponent. This is about exposing the game itself. Every move you make will shine a light on them, and they will strike back." The girl traced her fingers across the silver knight, her father's piece. Her voice was steady, unshaken. "Then let them. I'm done hiding." The weeks that followed were a storm. Her face appeared on every screen. Supporters cheered her as a symbol of defiance. Critics accused her of being a fraud, a spectacle, and behind it all, the whispers of the old guard, promising she would be crushed once more. And then, her first challenge arrived. A letter slipped under the door of the club. No fanfare, no cameras, just one name scrawled across the page. She read it once. Her breath caught. The paper shook in her hands. It wasn't just any opponent. It was someone who had been there the night her world collapsed, someone who had helped erase her. Her first match back would be against her oldest enemy. The club was packed that night, not with tourists or casual players, no. Every face in the crowd belonged to someone who mattered. Chess masters, sponsors, journalists, and in the middle of it all, her enemy. He sat across from her, older now, but his eyes just as sharp, his smirk just as cruel. "Well, well," he drawled, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The little runaway comes crawling back." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Instead, she placed her silver knight in its spot on the board. The piece gleamed under the harsh lights, a silent reminder of who she was and who she refused to stop being. The teacher leaned close, whispering, "Remember, this isn't just about you. This is about every kid who was told they didn't belong." The man in the coat spoke next, his voice low, measured. "And don't forget, they'll try to break you, not just here, not just now, but with every move." Her opponent slammed his pawn forward, the first strike echoing like a challenge. The crowd hushed, and so it began. The opening was brutal. He attacked fast, forcing her back, every move dripping with arrogance. Her mind flashed with memory, standing beside him at tournaments, once allies, before betrayal. The night he whispered lies to sponsors, the night he laughed as the doors closed in her face. And now, he sat across from her again, daring her to rise. Her hand shook as she reached for a piece. The weight of the past pressed heavy, but then she heard her father's voice in her memory, soft, steady. "The board is yours, always yours." She steadied her hand. The silver knight clicked into place. The crowd murmured. The game raged. Back and forth, strike and counterstrike. Every move felt like a wound reopening. Every gasp from the audience pulled her deeper into the storm. And then, he did it. A ruthless move. His queen swept across the board, cornering her king, tearing her defense apart. The crowd erupted. "It's over!" "She can't come back from that." Her chest tightened. Her palms sweated. Her vision blurred. The room seemed to spin, the weight of the world pressing in. Her enemy leaned forward, his smirk widening. Check. The board was collapsing. Her comeback, her fight, her very identity, hanging by a single thread. The room held its breath. Her king was cornered, her defenses shattered. Every eye was fixed on her trembling hands. Her opponent leaned back, arms crossed, the picture of arrogance. "Some things never change," he sneered. "You don't belong here." The words cut deep, reopening every scar. Her chest burned, her throat closed. For a moment, she was that little girl again, doors slammed in her face, dreams ripped away. She could feel the crowd waiting, ready to laugh, ready to dismiss her once more. Her vision blurred, and then, a memory. Her father's voice, soft but unyielding. "When the board closes in, don't look at the pieces they want you to see. Look at the ones they've forgotten." Her eyes snapped open. She scanned the board, faster, sharper than ever before. And there it was, a sliver of light in the darkness, a move hidden in plain sight. Her lips curved, the smirk of someone who had been told no her whole life and learned to turn it into checkmate. She lifted the silver knight, her father's piece, the weight of everything pressed into her palm, and with one clean motion, she set it down. Gasps erupted. Her opponent froze, eyes wide. The trap he thought was perfect collapsed around him. His queen exposed, his king cornered, his arrogance punished. 2 moves later, checkmate. The club exploded. Cheers shook the walls. Phones flew into the air, capturing history. She had done it. Not just beaten him, not just survived, she had reclaimed her place. Her opponent shoved back his chair, fury etched into his face. But no words came, because the board spoke for itself. She rose slowly, the silver knight clutched tight. Her chest heaved, tears glimmering, but she stood taller than she ever had. The teacher wiped her eyes, whispering, "You did it." The man in the coat gave a single nod, but his eyes carried no triumph, only warning, because even in victory, the truth remained. The people who erased her once were still out there, and now they would come for her harder than ever. She walked out of the club into the New York night, applause still echoing behind her. Her journey wasn't over, it had only just begun. Would you keep fighting, knowing the enemies you've awakened? Or would you walk away after victory, before they strike again? The club was silent now. The crowd had thinned, the lights dimmed, and the echoes of applause were fading into memory. But out on the New York streets, she walked alone. No cheering fans, no cameras, just the steady rhythm of her footsteps against the wet pavement. She clutched the silver knight in her pocket, her father's voice still lingering in her mind. Victory should have felt sweet. Instead, it felt heavy. Behind her, the teacher's voice called out, "Where will you go now?" She didn't answer, because the truth was, she didn't know. The man in the coat lit a cigarette at the corner, his eyes tracking her carefully. When she passed, he spoke, low and certain. Winning the game was the easy part. Surviving what comes next, that's the real challenge. She turned, but he was already gone. A chill swept the air. And then, her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. No name, just a single text. "We saw what you did tonight. It's your move now." Her heart stopped. She scanned the empty street, every shadow suddenly alive. Somewhere, someone was watching. Not a rival player, not a casual hater, but something bigger. Someone with reach, someone with power. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, her steps quickening. The city hummed around her, alive with secrets. Her story wasn't over. It was only the opening move in a much larger game. And the question is, when the next challenge comes, will she be ready? Or will they finally take from her what she fought so hard to reclaim? Tell me in the comments. What do you think the message meant? And don't forget to subscribe, because this checkmate was only the beginning. She thought the game ended with checkmate. She was wrong. The night after her victory, a shadow began to follow. Not just one man, not just one rival, but a network. People with money, people with power, people who had silenced others before and were ready to do it again. Her phone buzzes with messages from nowhere. Strangers know her name. Her face appears on screens she's never touched. The teacher urges caution. The man in the coat warns her to run, but she can't, because the same city that tried to erase her is now watching her every move. And this time, the board isn't made of 64 squares. It's everywhere, every street, every screen, every ally who could turn into an enemy with a single whisper. The question isn't whether she'll win the next game. The question is, will she survive long enough to play it? What would you do if victory made you a target? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe now, because part 2 changes everything.